Welcome to another episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast. In this episode, Marie Belzunce will be talking to us. Marie Belzunce is an extraordinary energy healer using her uniquely developed methodology and physical abilities to find the root cause of physical ailments and alleviate them by removing energy blocks from the body. Marie works both on physical and spiritual levels in close partnership with her and her clients' spirit guides to let them discover the greatness that's deep inside their hearts to help them embody more of who they really are. This episode is jam-packed with valuable insights for healers and spiritual seekers alike. Together with Marie, we take you through simple, practical exercises you can implement daily to hone your intuition and hear from your spirit guides.
Welcome to this episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast, which will center all about healing, but also about finding guidance through your higher self and connecting to your spirit guides. And we've got a special guest today, Marie Belzunce, who we've met in our personal journey, both as clients and as she was our client as well. And there was this connection being struck where we decided we need to bring Marie to the world and to you listeners, watchers, because she's got some incredible healing method using her psychic abilities that literally we were blown away by. And I don't think you will find anybody doing healing the same way as Marie does. So Marie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. Thank you.
So we are going to start by, perhaps you can tell us exactly how you do your healing, because it's interdimensional. It's like, I've heard we have people who align chakras, we've got people who do Reiki. The way you do it, incredible. It's your own method, right?
It is. And it's a method that actually has evolved over the years, and I feel it's still evolving. So who knows what I'll be doing next. But for now, yes, I started learning different healing modalities, but nothing ever felt right. Like, I would go and learn Reiki and I would go and learn different modalities. And then I always felt like I was trying to fit into someone else's box. And I was, feeling a bit uncomfortable with that. So one day in my meditations, I started to receive guidance from my own guides, my higher self, and getting visions of places in other dimensions. That's how I came across what I call my healing temple, which is a place in another dimension or outside of this one, where I can actually commune with my higher selves in different dimensions and they come to me in there according to what's needed for a client. And when that happens, I get access to different abilities that in the 3D world I don't. So I may see your thyroid. I'm able to sometimes feel or know or see what's going on inside of people's organs. So sometimes it may be their lungs, their gut, as well as the energetic meaning of that. So as we know, we're always manifesting what's going on, and we manifest our physical body. My understanding is from higher dimensions, right? So our physical body, what it does is exactly what we need for our mission for this incarnation. So getting access to their higher selves, the client's higher self, I'm able to see what's going on and why that higher self is manifesting this body, and with whatever ailments that might be going on. So then we can go in and fix that energy or acknowledge it and let it go so that the body then does what it needs to do next.
So
we convolute it.
It's amazing. Like what you do is absolutely amazing.
And we've experienced this firsthand. So yes. Marie worked on my thyroid and on Aaron's adrenal glands.
Yes.
And amongst other things, and to a fantastic effect.
So one of the things I wanted to ask is, When, let's say, for instance, you're working with a client, do you have a set way of healing, or do you intuitively tune into a person's organs or body and then channel in exactly what's needed to kind of correct that problem? Or do you find it's kind of, it follows the same kind of pattern every time? So could you explain how you kind of work in that regard?
It's very intuitive. And sometimes to the point that sometimes people come to me for guidance, to connect them with their guides and get messages. And the moment I open up my channel, my mind takes the back seat, right? So I may be asking their guides for a specific question, but suddenly, I don't know, their throat starts to flash in front of me. And I just know in that moment that, yeah, we're going to get you that guidance, but you're not leaving until I also see what your throat is wanted to say, or what your whatever else is wanted to say. So it's always very intuitive. And I like it that way. I actually went through a stage when I was first coming up with my method where I wanted to actually bring a structure in. So I needed to know, okay, step 1, start from this, step 2, I'll go and do that. And my guides wouldn't let me. It just wasn't going to happen that way. So when I went in thinking that I was going to move on to step 2, they will absolutely block me and re-guide me so that I could actually follow my intuition. So I don't think I'll ever be able to box it.
You can't systemize the quantum field, can you? That's the thing.
No.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah.
When you work with clients, you always say that the client's field is in charge, right?
The client's field is always in charge of proceedings. The client's field is the boss. I just merely co-create with a person's field, and it's exactly like you do it. It's all done intuitively and channeled in. It just comes in the moment. You can't plan, you can't script, you can't have a cookie cutter sized approach where you kind of create a system and then apply it to everybody, because it just doesn't work like that. So I completely, when you describe that, I completely resonate and I get it. I just understand where you operate, it's amazing.
I wanted to ask you, how did you first discover that you even had, psychic abilities? Because you're very visual.
Take us right back to the beginning.
Yes.
Take us right back to the beginning.
I've been thinking about that question for a long, long time, and I still don't really know what the answer is. As a child, I was a very sensitive kid. I would step on a plant and stop and apologize and ask it if it was okay, and I will actually feel so bad. I would feel that connection to every living organism around me, right? I was the weirdo that my parents needed to tell me the truth about the tooth fairy, because to me, it's like, money out of nowhere. I would go and buy stuff for kids that didn't have stuff. I would go to the school canteen and just ask the kids that never had money for the canteen what they wanted and just give it away. So I was always very sensitive in that regard. I didn't understand it at the time. Now looking back, I go, right, there was something different. But I grew up in a household with parents that don't believe in anything, right? So my mom, I had a brother who died very, very young as a toddler. And so that day, my family decided that there's nothing else, and God doesn't exist. And if he exists, he's insert what word they are. They said there's no spirit, there's nothing, So I didn't have a chance to ever question anything. We couldn't even discuss anything extrasensorial or anything outside of what's physical, right? So I think at that point, I kind of switched everything off just to make my mom happy. It's like, okay, there's nothing else. There's no more feelings. There's no connection to anything bigger than us. It doesn't exist. until later, I think it was around when my grandmother passed away. Before that, she had Alzheimer's for about 5 years. And she was living in Argentina and I was living here in Melbourne. And I would know exactly what was going on with her. It started with my grandma, who as a child, I had a great connection. I would just feel her. I would actually be able to go and visit her. I knew exactly when she passed, before she passed. And then I had her come and visit me as a spirit form many times. And she would always tell me, I was working in the corporate world, and she will come and sit with me in my bed and say, that's not your path. You need to start questioning stuff. And I did. I refused for a while, and then eventually I promised to my grandma that I will start my inner process, my getting to know myself, moving away from all the, conditioning from university and those ways of thinking. And I just started exploring different things, and it all came together super quick. At that moment, the moment I decided to actually start tuning in with myself, was like a massive thing just open and downloaded. And that's kind of how all my abilities started to come online.
Wow, what a story. What a
long story.
Was it easy to follow your intuition once you've kind of realized, okay, corporate world is not my thing? Or was it you said it came quite quickly?
It came quickly, but I had a lot of trouble letting go of my old life, right? So I had built a career and I was very much in the 3D complying and ticking all the boxes and doing all the right things. So I sort of left my healing stuff on the side, and it was something that was a hobby and to play with friends while I kept being very responsible, doing all the right things, showing up to work, until I just couldn't anymore. And basically, yes, it's that funny thing that happens, I suppose, when you start working with your guides and your higher self. It's like they will not allow certain things anymore. They will just, I call it, reroute you. It's like the GPS, when if you're meant to go that way and now you know it and you understand it and you can see it, there's no way you can push on a different direction. It just keeps rerouting until you actually decide to say, okay, all right, I'll surrender. I'll go that way. So yeah, it took me a couple of years to actually let go of the old identity.
Well, it took Aaron 2 decades.
It did. It did. I pushed my gifts away from me. I was kind of scared by them to begin with, and I felt I didn't really have anybody to sort of guide me at that time. I was sort of early 20s, and kind of just trying to figure it out myself, and everything tried to come through at once, and it scared the pants off me, really, and I pushed it away for over 20 years. But I wanted just to touch on, I think one of the things I've learned is that I think when you're completely out of alignment with what you should be doing, I think it causes friction with the universe, and eventually the universe will pull at you and pull at you and pull at you. And it might take a few years, but eventually, if you just don't take the hint, it just happens quite abruptly, and you get kind of dragged into alignment, whether you want it or not. And it's just interesting how people's paths always end up moving into alignment in the end, isn't it?
Just takes.
Yeah, that's what I say. They will not let you, once you can see it and when you sort of click in, they are relentless. They are
They're not going to let you go back to the matrix, are they? Once you've broken through. That's it.
No way.
I'm just wondering, what would be your advice to people who are aware of their multi-dimensionality, perhaps even of their abilities? Because a lot of you guys have amazing abilities listening to and watching this podcast, yet you've got your need life perhaps a career,
It's
perhaps, I don't know.
self-conscious, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps there is a mortgage, perhaps there's kids, you're living in a certain place, everything is nicely stuck together, but you feel a pull to do something else. What would you advise, Marie, to people like that? Because you do a lot of advice for everyday folks who, are still moving into this alignment. So what would you say, how to let go?
I've been doing a lot of work around that topic recently, because I've noticed as well with what's going on in our world the past couple of years, there's a lot of people that actually are starting to realize that now, if things open up, they don't want to go back to normal or the old ways. And some of them actually have used this past couple of years to also explore and go within and now wanting something different. So my advice is always, first of all, dream big. This is something that I actually received from my guides once when we were having a similar conversation around this. And they said, well, your problem is that you're not dreaming big enough. So when we start thinking about the mortgage and all these things and debt, it all comes from that contraction, right? From that fear of not having or not. But if you actually expand and can really dream bigger and have a vision that is exciting, it just drives you, right? If you can actually see it happening as an expanded version of whatever it is that we think we can do or we think we are going to do. Because I actually believe that most of us are here for a big purpose, but it is scary. And I think, Aaron, you were touching on that before, I just saw what is in front of me and it scared me. It was too big. And it triggers all these questions. Can I really do it? Is it possible that is that for me? I used to tell to my guys all the time, you made a mistake. I'm not the person for that job. It's not me. And they don't make mistakes. It's us it's that fear that we just let it win, right? We give it power and we're like, no, I'd rather stay in my old job because I can pay this bill. And I don't believe that's what we're here for. So first of all, it's always dream big, expand your field, see the big picture and let that be the guiding power, and then connect with that daily, many times a day. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we see it looks pretty and then we ignore it. So actually really connecting with that, with what is actually feeling exciting, and start asking, well, just break it down in little steps. What is one thing that I can do today that would get me closer to that vision? And again and again, and just, we don't need to be going from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds, but we give ourselves time and break it down in baby steps. I think that's important. And always bringing the guides in, getting their input. And I think that's important.
That's beautiful what you said, because you said about following your joy and following expansion, because I think the scary thing is that perhaps due to religious conditioning, some people have been wired to think that stepping into a mission is going to be hard because it's mission, it's sacrifice, it's something, that they're going to be poor, and it's nothing like that. It actually is the most expanded version of you. So you're not going to be punished by the universe for stepping into your mission. Quite opposite, you will have all this amazing support that happens, out of the blue. But it's not out of the blue. It's all divinely orchestrated. But it's all of that happening. So I'm really happy you've actually spoke to that. One thing that I want to ask you is, you mentioned working with guides a lot. About following the guides, listening to the guides, and obviously we work with our guides as well, although it took me a long time to connect with my guides and same with Aaron and actually start listening. That's another thing. I know that there will be people listening to this podcast who are like, well, who are my guides? how do I connect with my guides? Where would you get started? Because, I would say you are quite naturally gifted with vision, so is Aaron, but then there's people like me who are not very visual, and it's like, oh, I don't see my guides, I don't know what the names are, like where do I get started?
Well, actually, I get asked that question a lot, and it's very layered, because really we are always connected with our guides. It's not something that we need to go and connect. We are connected. Our guides are always with us. What happens is it's like this preconceived idea that it needs to happen a certain way, right? Like, because I'm visual, then if I'm talking with a client, they think they need to see their guides the same way that I do. And it's not. Some people are visual. Some people are more, they hear their guides. But what I find, and what I actually do sometimes with clients, is get them to just, clear their mind, center in their heart, ask a question. And the first thought that comes is the answer. So for most people, the guides are always connecting through thought. Then the visualizing is an extra. Wherever the guides are called is totally irrelevant. Who cares what the name of the guides is? That is not important. It's like the information is what you want. If they are called Mary, Tom, whatever is let's not get hung up on that. What you want is just that information. And if you really clear your mind, you come into your heart. If you've never connected with guides, if you never felt that you connected with guides before, just ask a question and trust the first thing that comes. Within 3 seconds, after that is your mind. You've lost it. Start again.
Yep. I one of the things that's really interesting that I find is that it's exactly like you say. So it's literally the first thing that comes in is the thing that is given to you. And what I find is the second that you trust that and you really dial into it, it's almost like the volume gets turned up and the connection just gets stronger and it begins to flow then. It's just that initially you just need to kind of get past and actually just trust what's coming through. Right?
And another thing is that sometimes your soul or your guides will speak, they won't use many words. It will be very much to the point. And we would, and in fact, I want to probably do a similar exercise in a second for all you listeners, but we were doing this exercise where for our Quantum Club members, where we've got those weekly spiritual development classes, and people were asking the question to the guides, and it was basically this woman who was a member said that her question was, when shall I leave my corporate job? And her guide said, immediately. So that's the kind of answers you get. Like, I was asking myself, okay, what do you want to do? Travel? Or where do you want to go? Latin America? It's just like one word.
Straight to the point. Straight to the point comes in seconds. And as you said, I feel that the more we trust, but I always recommend to people as well, when they are first developing that muscle that we all have and it's available to everybody, always start with questions that you don't care about the answer. So if we go in with a question that we have so much invested into, like, life-changing stuff. Well, sometimes we have already a charge, either positive or negative, towards an answer, right? So we are wanting to hear a certain way. We come with a bias. It's not really a good place to start. So even if you start with, okay, tea or coffee today, and just stuff that is not life-changing, that you don't care one way or another. And then once you kind of establish that, you're used to how you receive the information, you start attuning to the frequency of how that answer comes in, then start moving on to bigger things. And it doesn't need to take a year, but just a little bit of practice so that, okay, you are in flow with your guides, you're feeling comfortable and trusting the answer. then we move on to more perhaps life-changing stuff.
Yeah, so okay, let's do a little exercise using your kind of technique. So if you're driving, maybe don't do it. But to be honest, I feel like you can do exercises like that in everyday life. If you're walking somewhere, you can still speak to your guides. It doesn't have to be some big revelation. You do a ceremony. So think of a question. If you're listening to this podcast, think of a question you want to ask. And exactly like Marie said, something that isn't life-changing. So even if you get it wrong, there's going to be no consequences. So try to now take a few breaths, clear your mind, and then you're going to ask your question and first thing that comes to your mind. So if you're ready, ask your question.
I'm going to ask a question too.
Okay. And literally, once you finish asking, be quiet and just listen to what comes through.
Yeah, got it.
Just comes right away. You just need to listen. And it comes
what
through.
Was your question?
It comes through.
Personal?
Yeah.
No.
And
Okay.
it comes through as exactly as was said before. It comes through first of all just as a thought, and it's the first thought that comes into your mind. That's the easiest way for your guides to communicate with you if you're non-visual, or even if you are visual predominantly. It's just easier for that thought to come through first, and that's where you're going to get it. You just need to trust what comes through. And it's like anything though. I think once you've been doing it for a little while, you just get used to where the answers come from, and it's easier to hear it then, isn't it?
But I think it's very important. You both said about it's just a thought, because I think half of the time people
voice
in your head and fanfare and I don't know, some cloud appearing and angels and God knows what, and it's just a thought.
Just a thought. That's how it comes.
Yeah, that's what I always say. You don't realize, usually most people who think they are not connecting with their guides is because there's that expectation that they need to see a being, or that this being is going to come and stand in front of them. And look, it could be, that would be amazing, but it doesn't need to be that way. It's a much simple, much faster way actually that we have access to. And it really is life-changing once you feel that support around you and really understanding and feeling that you're not alone, right? You have a team supporting and cheering you on. It's just amazing.
This episode is brought to you by Transcending Dimensions, the Architects of Destiny new transformational program. This journey has been prepared for powerful creators choosing a higher level of consciousness to permeate and transform every aspect of their existence. Over the course of 12 weeks, we will share with you teachings and energetic upgrades that will help you leave outdated three-dimensional patterns behind and reprogram every aspect of your life for 5D abundance. Visit bit.ly/3D to 5D. That's bit.ly/3D 2TO 5D letter D. Once again, that's bit.ly/3D to 5D. Do you, like, when with your work, do you have obviously, do you work just with your guides, or do you work with a client's guides, or does it just depend? Or how would a session go for you if you're working with somebody?
I usually call their guides in. So I call my guides, my higher selves, and the clients and their team of guides as well. Yeah, it's busy. But yeah.
It's amazing. So, can you remember? I mean, I'm sure you absolutely are just in flow, and you love every single session that you do, and you love it equally. And it's difficult to pick a favorite. And I would say the same. But is there any sort of session you've ever had which has been standout for you, which you can kind of recall that you think, wow, you discovered something new, or
the guide surprised
you, or something along these lines?
Wow, there's been a few that have been really memorable. What I found is when I work with people who have a higher consciousness, it gets even more out there. Like my sessions, when I work with people that are more 3D, it's kind of like a state around what I suppose their comfort level. And when I work with people who are very highly evolved, it gets quite weird. So I was once working with a regular client who is very, very evolved. And I remember I saw him and he was about to expand, right? He was receiving like a huge upgrade and he could feel it. And then he came a few weeks after. I said, oh my gosh, I'm really excited just to tune in and see. And what had happened is his whole energy field has turned into a portal and he was connected into other dimensions. And so through this upgrade, he's actually bringing frequencies from other dimensions into here. So in the opposite way, how in my sessions, I actually take people to my interdimensional healing temple, he became this portal that was channeling stuff here. And he's actually doing amazing activations with clients. And that blew my mind. That blew my mind to see what his energy field had become. And yeah, it was really out there. I think that was crazy.
Wow. Wow. And the one thing it's and I guess that's why what you do really resonates, because I just get it, because I'm kind of in the same space. I just intuitively kind of know where you're coming from. But one thing, you're obviously intuitively connected to sort of the cosmos, right? You're connected to the universe and all this kind of thing, and higher dimensions and the quantum field. Do you find that you have to consciously, as a female, then ground into Gaia so you've got balance there? Or do you find that you have to work on an imbalance? Or do you find that you generally have balance between Gaia and the cosmos? How is it for you?
I balance it. Yeah. So I always first start with getting very connected and grounded and then expand from there. Having said that, it is actually like a conscious effort, because by default, I think I'm pretty much out of my body generally throughout the day, and have to really make a conscious effort to be at least 67% in my body.
Yes.
I tend to just be very flowy. Yes. Yeah.
It's this is it. I mean, I goodness me, it's the same for me. I can be driving down the road and I just slip off. I just slip in and slip out, slip in and slip out, slip in and slip out. Sometimes
I pull him back because I can tell.
Ria can tell, and
like, you drive, Ria.
Yeah. So if I'm on the subway or if I'm in a city or a taxi or whatever it is, people, strangers wouldn't know, but Ria knows. She can tell by my eyes, because my eyes just fixate on a point, because my point of attention isn't looking through my eyes, it's off looking at other things. So I get it.
I love it. Okay, when I was living in Singapore, I lived in Singapore for a few years and it was all public transport. And for someone like me, just mentioned on a train, oh my gosh, it's just running the memories, because I would be sitting on the train. And of course, it's not on purpose. It's just by default, the moment that I start to get a bit bored or not focusing on what's going on around me, suddenly I would be anywhere else. And the whole thing around me will change. And I start seeing sometimes other beings in the train, or sometimes I would go somewhere else. And the most bizarre experiences will happen. Yeah.
Okay, this is a great thing, because we've touched upon people who can't hear the guides or struggling to hear the guides, but there will be listeners who are like you two, where you drifting off, and perhaps it's freaking them out, because I bet you I know that when Aaron first experienced it, he was like freaking out, and it's probably same for you. So what would be the advice for people who are awakening to those abilities and it almost feels like out of control, and it's like, is it safe? Should I pursue it? What to do?
The topic of safety is actually a big one. And I say anybody who's experiencing that and is not used to those experiences, seek a bit of help or try to learn how to ground, how to protect your field, how to clear as well, especially if you're picking up a lot of energies around or getting in contact with other beings. There's a lot of what I call trickster energies that sometimes may represent themselves as being of the light, but they are not. So you gotta really be aware what you let in, always disconnecting from everything and clearing and doing protection, shielding, whichever way you do it. There's many ways. It's not a complicated process, but really is always being sovereign of your energetic space and who you interact with. So protection, clearing constantly.
Have you learned the hard way, Marie? Have you had any experiences? Because I mean, we've had. So
yeah. When I was first starting to awaken, I actually didn't. One day I was just feeling off, and lucky by chance, so it happened that I had booked an appointment with someone for like a reading healing in the afternoon. And I remember that day I was feeling off. I was walking to the shops and I was waiting for the traffic lights to cross a big avenue here. And I remember thinking, if I just put on a foot on the street now, it'd be all over. And just those thoughts coming in my head that were absolutely not mine. You know, I have 2 little kids, have a family, not, it wasn't coming from a bad place. I thought, why am I feeling this way? And lucky I had that appointment and I had a massive attachment on me and it got cleared. I didn't actually see it coming. I don't know how it happened, but it was just a huge lesson on clearing constantly my field. When something doesn't feel like me, when I feel that I'm not, being myself, straight away clear or ask someone who knows what they are doing, for help and support. Very important. As you open up, especially, very, very important.
I think it's like a natural part of the process that, when it's like, when you're walking, from time to time you will trip, or when, I don't know, you're running, you will get sweaty. It's the same way when you're working with energy, from time to time you'll come across not so nice energy. And
in a way, I think like these little lessons are good in a way. And, so it's, it would be, I would love for everything to be love and light within the field of consciousness, but we have all polarities, right? And everything in between. And I just think it's, when we experience things like this, it just makes us stronger, because actually we can kind of sort of fortify our defenses, really, and it protects us for the next time, right? We're always discovering. I mean, we've got some really strong protection around us, but even from time to time, things get in, and we've got to go in and clear even from the astral plane, things come in, and we need to kind of go in and clear that out. So it's definitely what, I think certainly in these times that we're in, adequate spiritual protection should be in my opinion anyway, the number one thing that people should kind of practice before kind of going out there into.
And for those of you who don't know much about protection, Aaron's written a really good article which outlines various protection techniques. We're going to link into this podcast so you can kind of learn. But the most basic technique is bathe yourself in white light. As simple as that. I mean, there's many of them available, and probably sometimes the basic ones, once something attaches itself to you, may need a bit more work to remove it, but something is better than nothing.
There's really kind of very technical ways you can protect yourself. There's many ways you can protect yourself, but the most basic and easiest thing you can do is to bathe yourself in white light consciously. But it's I think, like you say, it's quite interesting that we kind of touch on this, because it's especially for people who are opening up for the first time, and I think if people who are listening here are perhaps starting to awaken their consciousness for the first time and are a little bit inexperienced, maybe look for people who are a bit more experienced, who you can get guidance from and some experience from, certainly in protection, because within that field of consciousness there are some amazing stuff in there, incredible energies. But on the opposite, the polar opposite of that, you've got the opposite, which is quite negative. So we need to make sure that we're always of the light and the highest vibration. But I mean, in relation to you, have you had the same set of guides around you now for a while, or do you find that they interchange and different ones come in and they swap around? So how does it work for you?
Yeah, so I have two main guides that have been with me all my life, to Ascended Masters, and then I have others that come and go. And recently, in the last couple of years, since I've been going deeper into myself and my work, I have more guides that have been coming in. Galactic beings, spirits, and all sort of beautiful beings. So I love it. I love that they come and go, but I have two that have remained with me all my life.
Yeah, I've one of my favorite guys too, and they actually wanted to go, and they wanted someone else to replace them.
Really?
I asked them to stay.
You got quite attached to them, didn't you?
I got quite attached to my guys, yeah. So that.
Oh.
So, Marie, I want to go back for a bit to healing, because there will be a lot of people who have some physical ailments. Is it, in your opinion, in this kind of quantum world, because in the physical plane, there are certain perhaps illnesses or ailments that are considered chronic, incurable. But you said that you can do stuff in the quantum realm or in the higher dimensions that you can't do in the third dimension. So in your experience, is it possible to pretty much cure anything?
That's a huge question. Because really, I think, in my opinion, what I do, right, is like I facilitate stuff. I don't heal anybody. I open a door.
Yeah.
So really, a lot of the results really depend on what the consciousness of the person that I'm working with is able and willing to accept. And I know a lot of people will be thinking, well, no one chooses to be sick, or, it's not fun. Why would I be creating this? Of course, I want healing. But I'm not talking about the conscious mind. I'm talking about the unconscious, the soul's journey as well. There's no, in my opinion, most of the illnesses, the physical ailments that we have going on are here to teach us something. So we can resist and be stubborn. We can sometimes identify with the issue and get certain attention, or, be a certain way. And then, or we can learn the lesson and move on. So I've had, I work with people who have been told by their doctors that there's no solution or remedy to the situation, and they managed to reverse that. I have others that weren't able to do that. Why? Because maybe they didn't really fully believe that they could. So if you ask me from a point of view of the quantum field, everything is able to be manifested, right?
Yeah.
And that includes miracles, that includes amazing cures. But that is my belief, right? The person who is going through that needs to believe it as well and feel it and embody that resonance. Because this universe is a universe of resonance and frequency, right? That's all that exists.
Yeah.
Aaron, I know you get me.
That's a beautiful answer. Yeah, because
It is.
obviously it depends. We all creators of reality. So if you don't believe that you can be healthy, then
It's like
you won't.
it's like you
It's
say.
like when Jesus was walking the earth, he was saying, okay, your faith has kind of healed you. I didn't heal you, and in a way, still stands today.
But everything, as you say, everything is resonance. Everything is frequency. So one thing we've noticed is since our consciousness, both of us, has expanded and our vibration has raised. Okay. One of the things that we've noticed is that whereas before, when you'd start to come down with something, so like you'd normally get a cold or a flu or whatever it is, and you feel normally when you're under the weather, and it would normally take hold years ago. Now, nothing seems to stick within my body. So I'll feel under the weather. I can feel something coming in for probably 3 or 4 hours, and then literally my body will just shake it off. And I remember, this will be an interesting one for the listeners. I remember when we were in Australia, and I remember we'd gone to the city centre to do some shopping in Perth on one Friday, and we'd been up and down escalators and all this kind of stuff, and done some shopping and come back. And on the Sunday, I was kind of hit with something really, really heavy, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Felt really heavy in my body.
We actually had the friends over, and we had to cancel because we felt like, we can't have friends for dinner because we don't want to pass whatever was on, right?
So basically, I remember this coming on. It was very, very heavy, and I tuned into what this was, right? What was in my body. So I turned my point of attention inside of my body because I wanted to know, because it felt it felt really strong and really heavy. And I was like, and it came through as COVID, is what had come in, right? Coronavirus, or not the coronavirus as in the common cold, but what's been floating around recently over the last couple of years. And it was really, really heavy. And I thought, right, okay. And I just became exhausted and needed to lie down in the afternoon. So I just laid down, didn't really have an appetite. I just felt really, really tired. And that lasted of an afternoon. I went to sleep. The following morning, I felt absolutely right as rain, and I was at the gym. And my body had just literally rejected it. And I think that when we start to vibrate at a certain level, and like you say, colds, coughs, sneezes, anything which are viruses, which aren't of our body, or anything external which isn't of our body, it all has its own frequency and resonance. And if your body is vibrating, is attuned at a higher frequency than this external object that would have come in and made you sick, it can't survive. I'm totally convinced, and I've seen with my consciousness, my body just rejecting this stuff, and you're the same.
I flash a good light language. So that's my method. Since
we've awakened, we're never sick. I'm never sick, never.
Not for long.
No, just very, very temporary, and so it's marvelous. And I think as we move forwards, technology such as med beds and frequency healing and all this kind of stuff is going to become mainstream. And disease as we know it on Earth is kind of going to be a fraction of what we see today. It's going to be a wonderful place. But I'm certainly interested. So in relation to how you see what you do, are you interested in developing it further? Are you kind of looking to add to what you do? Are you looking to train other kind of healers to do what you do? What's your vision going forwards for your work?
I know that I'm expanding and evolving, so I'm super keen to see what else is there. The other day very recently, I had a client who had a sore leg, and I was tuning into her legs, and then my guides started to show me almost like the template of that leg on all the different bodies, like the emotional, mental, astral, everything sort of, like it looked like a template. And I just had this knowing, this feeling that if I could work at that level, I could change it or fix it at that level, and then it will manifest. But I'm not there yet. I know that that's kind of like what I'm working towards. I don't know if I could train someone to do what I do, because it's so very intuitive and it's done with my guides and my higher self. So I feel what I could do is help someone come up with their own thing, connecting with their guides and their higher self. But as we talked before, I can't really package what I do. I can't put steps. So I don't know how I could pass it on to someone, right? Maybe one day. I don't know.
Well, the best thing to sample Mari's frequency and method is to connect with Mari. So where can our listeners find you? Because there might be people who have some ailments or just want some guidance from the higher self. Where can they find you?
Where can people find you?
On my website is maribelzunce.com. So we can link it.
Yes,
sure. And so all the information is there for the type of sessions and works that I do, these packages, and all the offerings are there.
Any of the social media platforms? Are you on any of the social platforms?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I have a Telegram channel that is where people can find me the most. I'm not very active. Yeah, I'm not very active on Facebook and Instagram. I should, but my lady here recommended.
I'm like everywhere, but at the same time, it's again following your inner guidance, because we, for example, had this kind of download over almost 2 years ago now that we shouldn't be using any paid advertising, and we stopped, and it didn't impact our business. So everything happened for a reason. But we certainly link to Mari's website, so you can find her straight on her own domain.
To everybody watching this episode, I highly, highly recommend that you go to Mari's website, you check her out, you maybe book a session if you feel aligned and called to do that. She's sensational. For somebody, I've got a real quantum connection with my consciousness, and when I meet another person who is very similar, it really resonates, and she's absolutely the real deal. So anybody listening to this, I strongly recommend that you get in touch with Mari and perhaps look to work with her moving forward. She's fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast. Been really looking forward to this episode, and looking forward to talking to you about what you did. And thank you so much for sharing what you've shared. And it's been great to have this conversation all the way from Costa Rica, connecting to you all the way in Melbourne, down under. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. It was awesome talking to you. I love you boys so much, and you're so supportive. Thank you so much. And get in touch if I can be of help. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Architects of Destiny podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.